like to turn it over to Garrett now from SpaceX.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks. So if I can start with my first slide. So about a year and a half ago, SpaceX started partnering with NASA to work on Crew. And this was really, really important to SpaceX for a number of reasons. First being that the company was founded with the sole intent or sole purpose of advancing the cause of human spaceflight. And so this is really what we're all about. And so having this opportunity to be part of the Commercial Crew Program is very special to us. Second reason is that, for well over a year now, since Atlantis came to wheel stop, the United States of America no longer has the capability to launch people into space. And that's something that we are not happy about. I'd venture so far as to say that nobody sitting up here on this panel is happy about that. But we're very, very proud to be part of the group, the Commercial Crew Program, that's going to do something about that and get Americans back into space. And at SpaceX, we feel a sense of urgency to get Americans back into space on safe and reliable transportation on American-made rockets. And so I'm very happy for that reason to be here today. So during the first program, CCDEV-2, we're in a bit of a unique position at SpaceX because we already have a rocket and a spacecraft that is traveling to the space station. In fact, we've gone back and forth to the space station now twice on cargo missions. So we took the approach in CCDEV-2 of figuring out, well, what do we have to do to modify this rocket and this spacecraft to not only carry cargo but to carry people. Now this wasn't that hard because from the very beginning we intended to do this. And on our first cargo flight, that vehicle had windows, for example. That's a superficial example, but technically we had built into this vehicle the capability to meet human rating requirements from the very beginning. And so there were still some things we needed to do, technical challenges that we needed to overcome to get ready to carry people. So that's what we focused on in CCDEV-2. It was primarily the launch abort system, so we built a new engine which we call the Super Draco. It's a 17,000-pound thrust hypergol engine, and we were going to use 8 of those to provide basically an ejection capability for the crew to take them to safety in the event that the Falcon 9 rocket is having a bad day. So we developed the engine, we developed a test stand to test the engine, and we developed all the related components. We also worked on all the other things you need to do that people need that cargo doesn't need. So we worked on seats, on spacesuits, on life control systems, how we're going to modify our launch pad, all those different things that we need to do for Crew. And finally we did a bunch of homework, a bunch of analyses to make sure that our designs were heading in the right way. And last, we did a couple crew trials where we brought NASA astronauts in, had them sit in a prototype of the cabin of the Dragon and evaluate it for ergonomics and human factors. So we did all that in that 1 year, and we completed everything back in June of last year. So that's all done. And then we moved on, and I'm sorry, in the next slide, there's some pretty pictures of some of those things that we did. You see a depiction of the interior of the cabin, what that's going to look like. We're going to have 2 rows of seating. It's going to be stadium seating. Upper row there is first class. The bottom row is that's the coach, I guess. So that's what it's going to look like on the inside. The picture of the rocket engine there is our Super Draco engine firing on our test stand that we built in just a few months in our facility in Texas. You see some of the modifications we have planned for the tower. In the middle picture on the bottom is some testing we were doing of our carbon dioxide scrubbing for the life support system. And finally you see a picture of a prototype spacesuit that we worked on. So that was all done and finished back in June of last year. So moving on into CCI-CAP, which we're very proud to be a part of, we basically have 4 main focus areas for CCI-CAP. And this is what we're going to be working on for over another year. And that is to complete the integrated design, to complete the design of both the rocket, the spacecraft, the ground systems, the mission control, all that, to a critical design level, meaning that we're ready to start building and pretty soon flying. So completing through a critical design review is the first goal. Second thing is we're going to do a lot of hardware testing to reduce risk. We believe in testing hardware early and often at SpaceX, and we've already done a bunch of this, and we're going to do even more in the near future. We're focused during this whole period on crew safety. We know this is very, I can't stress how important that is. Having strapped into a rocket before, I could tell you that I have a personal, emotional reason why I want to build a vehicle that is safer than anything that's flown before by an order of magnitude. And finally, preparing for NASA certification, making sure that we're building a vehicle that is going to meet NASA's needs. So those are the 4 areas that we're focused on. On the next slide, I think I could tell you a little bit more about the detail. This is a whole bunch of different milestones up there, but these are all of our milestones in the space period that accomplish those 4 objectives. And we've already completed the first 4, and we're moving on. The 5th one is coming up in March. Our plan is to get to the point where we can fly to the ISS with a non-NASA crew by the end of 2015. Now that is if we successfully execute all of our base period milestones and our optional period milestones on schedule. And so far we're on schedule. Next slide. So in 2012, what we've done so far in CCICAP, we've completed these 4 milestones: a technical baseline review, a financial and a business review, a system requirements review, and then our most recent one, just before the holidays, we completed our preliminary design review for the ground systems and the ascent part of the flight regimes. So you see some pictures in there, some of those things that went into that preliminary design review. You see a picture of the new engines. We're upgrading the Falcon 9 rocket. And a big part of that upgrade is to be ready to carry crew. One of those things are new engines. That's a Merlin 1D. It finished its qualification testing, and we're moving ahead with that. The next step is to test 9 of them together in the stage. To the right, the picture you see there to the right is wind tunnel testing that we did at Langley, NASA Langley, in partnership with one of these reimbursable Space Act agreements, and we tested a new shape of the capsule to make sure that our modifications will work well as a cargo Dragon does for coming back through the atmosphere for entry and then ultimately for landing. Finally, see some conceptual ideas of how we might do displays for the crew, how we would overlay data and video for, in this case, for proximity operations and docking. Next slide. So what we have coming up in 2013, we have a lot on our plate. We're going to be very, very busy. We have a pad abort test review where we're going to go through the test plan in detail for the pad abort test that we are doing at the end of the year. We're going to do a human certification review to make sure that we have a plan in place that will get us to a certified vehicle ready for NASA astronauts to take to the space station. We're doing an on-orbit and entry preliminary design review, so we did already the ground systems and ascent. Next step, we have a second preliminary design review to focus on orbit and entry. That's coming up this summer. Then we move on to the in-flight abort test review. That's the next big hardware test. And then we have a safety review focused on all those products that will go into detail about how we're going to accomplish that order of magnitude safety improvement over any previous vehicle. And then a flight review of our new upgraded Falcon 9 comes in November. And finally, we end the year on a really big high note, which is by doing a pad abort test right here behind us at KSC, where we're going to take this is not a demonstration test, this is a flight-like, full-scale pad abort test for certification as well as risk mitigation. We're going to take a Dragon as flight-like as possible, take it from our pad over at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, and demonstrate our ability to get away from the Falcon 9 on the pad from 0 altitude and 0 airspeed if we're having a bad day on the pad. So that's what we have coming up in the next year. I want to give you a sneak peek into 2014, if we can show the next slide. So in 2014, we have 3 milestones that wrap up CCICAP base period. And in that period of time, we're going to do a qualification testing of the primary structure. We're going to stress it and bend it and hopefully not break it, but make sure it can take anything that it might get dished at it in flight. We're going to do the final critical design review and prove that we're ready to start manufacturing. And then finally, we're going to end this program by doing an in-flight abort test, meaning that we're going to take a Dragon, again a flight-like Dragon, full size, stick it on top of a Falcon 9, launch it out of our launch pad right here, and at the worst possible moment, we're going to have that Dragon light up its Super Dracos and fly away and safely splash down into the Atlantic, demonstrating the capability to deliver the crew safely should the Falcon 9 be having a bad day. So in a nutshell, that's what we have planned for CCICAP. Again, we're very happy with this partnership that we have with NASA. We want to see it continue all the way so that in the near future we can get Americans back into space on American rockets.
Ed? Gee, thanks. As you can tell from our partners, they have been extremely busy. And I think the partnership between NASA and each of these companies clearly shows that we have a very vibrant space industry in the United States, and the space industry wants to meet the goal of getting U.S. capability back into low Earth orbit. I have a few charts to talk about the big picture from the program standpoint and where we're headed, where we're at now, where we're headed. So if I can go to my first chart. This is a chart that kind of shows our program life cycle, and you can think about, well, what's a life cycle? From us program guys, we look at a life cycle from the time we begin a new thought to the time that we are actually executing the mission. And in this case, we really have two purposes of the commercial crew life cycle. One is for a public purpose, and one is also for a specific NASA purpose to get to ISS. You can see that in the yellow life cycle, all of our partners, all four of the folks here today, have all been part of this public purpose, either through CCDEV-1, CCDEV-2, and now into ICAP. You can see that a couple of them, three of them, are now continuing on into ICAP, and then some of those will then transition into the blue line, which is our NASA purpose, which is certification and services. So by doing this, we really are creating a capability for the nation to use. And as we create that capability, then NASA will become a customer of that service so that we can use this capability to move our flight crew and our astronauts to the International Space Station and continue on with the science at the International Space Station. Well, that's a nice pictorial. Now how do we actually make it work? And that's the next chart. We showed this chart back in August of last year, in which he said, here's our acquisition strategy overall for the program, for the commercial crew program. You can see all the partners here today talked about CCDEV-1 and 2 and ICAP, and that's the top portion. We also talked back in August, and I'll re-highlight again, that we have two phases under the certification phase, under the certification effort for our international, for an ISS crew transportation. Phase 1, which I'll talk about that in much more detail here in a minute, is the phase that we're just starting, and it'll be starting in about 2 weeks. We'll then transition to phase 2 in the late spring of 2014. And that second phase I'll also talk about briefly today, and how that phase is really going to take us from all the work that has been done through the development in a partnership with our partners today, and with any other new industry partners that would like to come join us, to compete for the capability to go get certified for a NASA mission to the International Space Station. And that should be concluded sometime between 2015 and 2017 from an overall schedule standpoint of when we think we can get crew and a capability for services. And then we'll, of course, transition into services once we have a certified system. Today I want to talk a little bit about the next chart, which is our certification products contract. When we awarded ICAP in August, we quickly turned around and said that we need a contract mechanism by which we can talk about requirements. Our requirements to get our crew to the International Space Station, our safety requirements as well as our performance requirements. And so the first step of that was this certification products contract. And it was really part of a phased acquisition to get to that certified system. The primary objective of the CPC, as we like to call it, since we like acronyms, is to begin the early critical certification work to meet our set of requirements that we have laid out. It's really maturing key certification products in phase 1. That's what we're talking about in CPC. As those